Joining me today is Mario Cartaya. His new book, is Journey Back into the Vault in Search of My Faded Cuban Childhood Footprints. Mario Cartaya found the inner peace he needed by confronting memories he didn't know he had. Born in Havana in 1951, he left Cuba at age 8 after the turbulent winds of change forced his family to immigrate to the United States. Years passed, and the memories of his childhood were seemingly lost until 56 years later when he returned to Cuba to rediscover the faded origins of his existence. He offers the universal message that facing the challenges of our past provides the soul the clarity it needs to rest and then evolve. Mario's life story and award winning architectural designs were entered into the United States Congressional Record of the House of Representatives in 2019, forever enshrined in the U.S. Library of Congress. An American flag was flown over the U.S. Capitol to celebrate his legacy in 2022. Welcome to the show, Mario. Nice to have you on today.
Well, it's very nice to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you, Kathryn.
First question, Mario, is what made you think after 56 years that you could return to Cuba and, as I said in the intro, sort of rediscover yourself and get and understand where you came from? 56 years, that's a long time.
Yes, it is a long time. And I had already gotten to the point in my life that I figured, okay, that's just the way my life has evolved. But then I was on the committee that helped President Obama uh, go to Cuba with his rapprochement program, meeting with John Kerry almost on a biweekly way to try and counsel the American president. When time came to go with the entourage, I decided not to go because I didn't feel that it was proper that my first trip back to the land of my birth would be in a political junket. So I didn't go. But then I watched the president as he addressed the Cuban and American nations from the Great Theater in Havana. And he started his presentation by quoting the words of Jose Marti, which is a Cuban patriot and poet, in which he writes, I will cultivate a white carnation for a friend. I would also cultivate a white carnation for my enemy. And that hit home. Why is it that, I can't reconcile? Why is it that, something is keeping me away, yet I know I have to eventually go and confront these experiences that I've had. And that's the point, that's the day that I decided that I was going to now try to go back. I did not know what I would find. I did not know what effect it would have for me. I just knew that I had to try. And so I did.
And so you did it then, and it was as a result of the president and him going to Cuba. But how were you able to, and I'm using the word as a social worker, compartmentalize? You call it a vault, I guess. You were able to keep these memories, this past, in a section of your being so that you didn't have to deal with the feelings or all of the feelings, I'm assuming, that once you went to Cuba resurfaced.
It's not so much resurface, Catherine, as it is I began to walk into the subconscious vault where they were kept away from me for my own protection. My 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 immigration from Cuba was very traumatic. My father, an accountant, all of his clients were American, large companies like Frigidaire, Sylvania, General Electric. All of their properties in Cuba went through my father's ledgers, the his accountants' books. When they decided that they were going to confiscate all American properties in 1960, sure enough, some of the military personnel went to my father's office demanding that he gave them his books. My father objected. He didn't give him anything, to which he was taken in detention and then threatened that either he gave him uh, what they were looking for or horrible things were going to happen to him. So he was told after he finally did return to them his books, he was warned that his future safety in the island was no longer guaranteed and he should leave the island.
So I'm going to stop you there because all this is happening with your father, your parents. But what was happening with you? You're 8 years old. Were you aware of all of this political turmoil, or actually all the personal stuff that was happening to your father, your family?
Yeah, very, very much aware. The year leading into Castro taking over, there was a lot of street to street warfare in Havana. They were putting bombs in theaters, they were putting bombs in places that people went. This is the Castro sympathizers. And then Batista's secret police began killing anyone who was a Castro sympathizer on the streets. So I was very well aware that I could not go to the movie theater because we could not go here, because we could not go there, because the fear was there. And then when my dad was taken in detention, he was gone for about 48 hours. And we thought that perhaps he was dead. Back then, Cuban life was not worth that much if you were picked up and then for refusing to cooperate with the new government. So yeah, I was very much aware that things had changed. And then I watched as my father asked my extended family for permission to leave Cuba and come to the US. And I watched as my grandfather went to him and said, Ignacio, you cannot be a husband to my daughter or a father to my grandchildren if you're dead. Travel to the US and return to us when this nightmare is over. So I was aware of that. I knew that day watching, hiding behind the balusters of my second floor balcony in my home, watching my dad ask for permission to leave with us. I knew back then that my life had changed.
Okay, you knew your life had changed at that point. Then you come to the United States and you're just a kid, come to Florida, and the adjustment, what was the process? Because I guess you're saying at that point you put all of this behind you because you didn't get back there till 56 years later. So just from an emotional standpoint, where were you as an 8-year-old in the United States?
Well, there are three components to that. The first component is the emotional. We arrived, and it was November of 1960. And at that point, there's no communication between the US and Cuba. No telephone, no letters were coming through. And those that did come through were all destroyed. They were redacted and cut and everything else. It was a very difficult time of separation. When we left, we never had any communication with my grandparents, uncles that we left behind. Everyone eventually dies. We never saw them again. It was that kind of a separation anxiety. So that's the first component. The second component was not that bad. Was the U.S. that much different from Cuba? No. I mean, the U.S. was the land of cowboys and Indians. Or the shows I used to watch. I could still see Rin Tin Tin on television. I could even see baseball games all the time. So for me as a child, the programs that I watched in Cuba were really the American programs.
Yeah, because you came from a well-to-do family in Cuba.
I did not come from a well-to-do family. We came from a medium-to-do family. They were both professionals. My father was an accountant. My mother was a school teacher who also played classical piano. So we were doing well.
Yeah.
But we were not an elite family by any means.
Yeah. Not elite, but middle class in the sense that, as you're saying, you're watching the same TV shows. You have a mother who's a teacher, a father who's an accountant. So you're saying that kind of, I guess, socioeconomic difference was not that great.
Well, the most difficult part of my adjustment, just to tell you the third component, was trying to learn how to be a little American kid. The culture, all kinds of funny stories as I tried to adapt, right?
Yeah. What about the language before you say, did you speak English or did you have to learn?
Well, I learned a little English when I was in Cuba because I went to a prep school called the um, Edison Institute, were named after Thomas Alva Edison. So they taught us a little English, just enough to get by, but not enough to really have a conversation with another 8-year-old child. But pretty soon, I was able to learn enough to communicate, and then, of course, the metamorphosis became quicker.
So, what about
It didn't
friends?
take
Here
long.
you are in elementary school and you do speak a little English, but not a lot.
Mhm.
And did you have to, as suffer the indignities that little kids uh, can kind of surround you with when you come from a different country and you have an accent and all of that kind of stuff, and that kind of an adjustment, or not?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story.
Okay.
When I came here, of course, I'm 9 years old, and um, I met this other kid. We went on to be lifelong friends, but we became good friends in that fourth grade. We were always playing baseball. He taught me how to play football. That was part of the adaptation to the new country. But then one day I came to school and I had a cold, and his name was Mike. And Mike comes to me and he goes, "Mario, your nose is running. Clean it." Now I thought he was joking because I responded to him, "Mike, no, my nose doesn't run." And then he laughed and he goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." And he says, "Your feet smell." And now I knew for sure that he was making fun of my English, right?
Yeah.
Your nose is running, your feet smell. So I punched him. So we were taken to the principal, and the principal called in the only person in the school that spoke Spanish. And he asked me, "Why did you punch him?" So I told him he was making fun of me. He goes, "Mario, no, 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 no. He wasn't making fun of you. That's an American slang." So that day I knew, okay, Mario, you need to learn American slang.
Yeah. And I assume you did.
Oh, absolutely.
You absolutely did. Well, let's get back to the vaults, though, because I mean, that's obviously in the title of your book. And what were those vaults? How did that, how were you able to manage that in your psyche so that you could separate all that happened to you and become, well, first of all, you became extremely successful, as I read in the intro, successful architect. Um, can we make a connection between your emotional state and your cognitive state and your successes?
Well, I've come to realize that um, part of the drive that I've always had to succeed comes because of the separation. My grandfather used to live with us. My grandparents used to live with our family. And every day, my grandfather tried to get me to play with three-dimensional toys, to paint, to draw, because he saw that I had a certain amount of talent. And then, of course, everything gets broken. I can no longer talk to him. I can no longer see him. He dies, and he never was able to see how I was doing here in the U.S. or even discuss my life with me. So what I know now is that part of my vault gave me this drive to prove to him that um, kind of understanding that he had, that I would eventually become an architect and become uh, a good architect, right, was
Yeah.
realized. So that separation, I think that I always use as fuel to want to do better than anyone else around me. However, the separation, all my Cuban memories were gone. They were all inside this place in my subconscious that I couldn't really feel it, but at nights I would wake up sweating from like images that would pop into my dreams, black and white images with no context. And I never knew what it was that I was seeing. And that was one of the other things that I told my wife, I need to go resolve. I need to know what these images are, why I'm getting them, and what are they trying to tell me.
So when you got back, when you did finally, after I keep repeating it, 56 years, get back to Cuba. All those emotions and the feelings of leaving your grandparents and all the people that you loved. And did they come? I don't want to put words in your mouth. How did you, what, I guess, how were you able to handle those emotions, the grief, the loss, all at once?
with a lot of love. The biggest fear, of course, is what demons am I going to find? The demons of the past that I'm being kept from. But there were no demons in all the memories that came back. Whenever I went to the places synonymous with my childhood, let that be the homes that I lived in, or the school that I went to, or the park that I played in, when the memories did come back, they came back like videos, not as individual photographs, because I had not thought about them for 56 years. So they were still pristine memories. They were not corrupted by remembering them as often as most people do. So it was just like everything happened yesterday. I could once again smell the smells. I could once again even feel what I felt as a 6 year old, as a 7 year old, as an 8 year old during the memories as they returned. Of course, they all came back as they belonged to the places that I went to. So the memories of my home, what happened there came back in that home. The memories of my school came back when I somehow ended up returning to the very same classroom that I had left so quietly in 1960. They came back as to my experiences in the park that I used to go as a child. So the memories were those memories that were synonymous with the places that I went, except for one.
When you came, I want to relate that kind of, I don't know if you call it fast forward, but like now, as a grown man here in the United States, successful, what's your response to what's happening in Cuba now?
Well, we've been through this before. We've been through periods that we think, well, maybe there's a change coming. So as of now, I am cautiously optimistic. I really, I really hope and pray that our better angels would illuminate those who are talking into trying to find a way where everyone wins and no one loses, and avoid uh, the uh, the suffering and the bloodshed that has been synonymous with Cuban life over the past 65 years.
And I hope that does, yes, that's a, I guess that's well said. And so you have to, I guess, have hope, right? And as you said, you've been through it before, or Cuba has been through this before,
Mhm.
right? It's evolving, and we hope. Um, so, in confronting the past, when you were in Cuba, you come back. Is your wife Cuban, or is she born in America? And what was the impact on your relationship with her? Because now you, as I think I read in the info, in the intro, which you've said, you've evolved. You've let all of these emotions come to the surface. How does that impact you and your own family here in the United States?
Well, it's beautiful when uh, even after I came back from Cuba, uh, the first sign that this was going to be a more long range return of memories was when I began to write. I did not go to Cuba to write a book. I went to Cuba only to try and see whether the stimulus of returning to those places where I spent my life in Cuba, to see if that would return the memories, right? The stimulus. When I came back and we're in the airport with my two buddies and we're about to say goodbye, one of my friends, George, said, Mario, you need to write this down. What happened to you this week was just something that I think that the world needs to read. It's the hope of finding that inner peace that we all look for. You need to write this book. So I did. And as I wrote, I would sometimes just write, not think about sentence structure or paragraphs or anything like that. I just let it out. And there were times that I read what I had written and it surprised me. The words that came out, the beauty of the words that came out, and the depth of what was coming out. That process has continued, where little by little I began to realize that I've been doing something because it really came from that time.
Yeah.
It came from um, my life in Cuba, my life with my family, sayings that my family had, little rituals that my family had. All these things are still being emptied from the vault as I have returned, and my wife has been a part of it.
And,
No,
and how
no,
has she
no,
been a
no,
part
no
of it?
more
Here you
dreams.
are, you faced your demons or are continuing to face your
Yeah.
demons, as we all want to do. But because you've really evolved in doing that. And she's, I'm assuming you're saying she's supported. Is she surprised? This is,
No, no, she wasn't because she was next to me uh, every time that I would wake up from a dream, sweating and excited. You know, I don't know what that was, baby. I had no idea what that picture was. I have no idea who's talking to me, who's trying to make me realize something. So she knew that I had to go down there and face uh, these um, these changes that I was going to prior to going, and I did not want to take her for several reasons. I did not go with her. I had her stay here, but my life has taken me to be an advisor to several American presidents, governors, senators, and all that. And I knew that going back, as soon as I touched Cuban soil, it was going to raise a red flag. Who is this guy that has worked with American president who is now coming to Cuba? Who is he going to go see? You know, the paranoia
yeah,
of a dictatorship. Um, and I did not want her to be with me should anything nefarious happen to me.
yeah.
So I did take her on my second trip to finally see everything that had changed my life. But I did go with two friends of a lifetime that were my age, and um, and they wanted to be there with me.
So you had the support. I think that sounds like a wise decision. I was with my partner. He and I were in Cuba in 2020, yeah, in 2003. And so I'm understanding some of that experience of kind of being watched as an American, uh, you know, Fidel Castro on television 24/7. That was the only channel we had.
Mhm.
Um, Using the internet and internet cafes, beautiful country, beautiful people, but all of that kind of, I wouldn't call it paranoia, kind of reality that you're being watched and be careful.
Yes, the two friends that went with me was funny how we arrived at that. I was going to go alone, and one of my friends, who was also my mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer for over 20 years, George, uh, said, Mario, I want to go to Cuba with you. And I said, no, no, George, no. This is going to be an exploration for me. It's a quest. I'm going to be spending all the time there trying to remember, trying to assert who I am. You don't want to be a part of that. And then he said, Mario, you don't understand. I was not born in Cuba. I was born here. I never had a childhood in Cuba. You finding your childhood will be like me seeing his own childhood develop. And that hit me. It's not always about me. There's this friend who wants to actualize who he would have been, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, of course, George, you want to come with me? You're welcome. And then that night, we both have another friend who used to work for me as an architect for 16 years. And he calls up and he goes, well, you guys are not going to go to Cuba without me. And I said, Jose, I know why you want to go. You want to dance, you want to drink, you want to do all this stuff. And this is not the trip for you. And he goes, no, no, Mario, you got that all wrong. How about this? He says, during the day, we'll belong to you. We'll do anything you want to do. But at night, you belong to us. And we'll be there to help you cope at night, to help counsel you at night after you spend the days going into your vault.
That's a very wise friend.
It was.
We only have a couple minutes left, so we can't. I'd love to continue the conversation. This was great, but I want you to give us a website and other platforms to go to, so the audience can obviously get your book and follow you on. Can we follow you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, what website can we go to?
Well, I'm on Facebook.
Yeah.
You can go to Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. You can go to Instagram. Um, my website is www.mariocartaya.com, and there you can see all of the success of the book. You can see letters that I have received from people like Isabel Allende, who is a great Chilean writer, letters from people in Hollywood, a director, Cece, that was an Academy Award winner, all kinds of people that you may know, and how the book has affected them. It's a wonderful website to go to, www.mariocartaya.com.
Great. Mario Kataya. The book
.com.
is Journey Back, yes, .com. And the title of the book is Journey Back into the Vault in Search of My Faded Cuban Childhood Footprints. Thanks so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it.
And one more plug, the book
Yep.
is also available in Spanish.
Oh, okay, great. I know a little Spanish.
I hope you know all the good words.
Yes, I know both, actually. The good, yeah.
Well, we know that too.
Yes, okay. Have a good one.
Hey, you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Joining me today is Laura Cheadle, author of, well, she's an author of several books, but what we're going to be talking about today is the real drivers of infidelity and how to reclaim identity and self-worth following betrayal. Many affairs happen in relationships that seem perfectly happy. And when betrayal is discovered, it doesn't just break hearts, it shatters a person's identity, their entire sense of who they are in the world. Laura Cheadle's expertise is born from lived experience. When she discovered her husband had been unfaithful for 15 years, she faced a choice: remain a victim or become an architect of her own healing. She chose transformation. The work she and her husband did to repair their marriage with accountability, integrity, and commitment became the foundation for her work in betrayal recovery. Laura is an author, a TEDx speaker, and leadership wellness coach. She's also an attorney who specializes in burnout and betrayal recovery. She's spoken and trained internationally and hosts the top-rated podcast Flaunt: Create a Life You Love After Infidelity or Betrayal. Welcome to the show, Laura. Nice to have you on today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
All right, 15 years. I'm thinking, how did you think you were going to be able to trust your husband after 15 years of infidelity?
That's huge.
Yeah, that's the big question. That's a lot of years.
First off, yes, it's a
Okay.
lot of years. However, it wasn't a consistent relationship. He had a quote friendship where they would have sexual contact maybe every 3 years or so during that time. So while 15 years feels like a very long time, and it was, in fact, it was just very sporadic, which also changes things.
Yeah, it does. But okay, let's start. Okay, say why? Because most people would ask I'll ask the question actually. So it was sporadic. What triggered or his infidelity? What, in those
Yes.
sporadic moments?
Yes. Infidelity is not what we typically think it is. Most people think it's passion, it's true love, it's being drunk and having a one-night stand. In truth, infidelity is kind of a deep, dark coping mechanism. In my husband's case, and in many people's case, they cheat when they have an unmet need. And by unmet need, I mean they are feeling something inside of them: depression, disappointment in life, frustration, and they can't identify what they're feeling, nor can they speak up and communicate to somebody else. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling anxious. So they reach for cheating the same way somebody might reach for wine or gambling or any other thing that helps them cope in that moment.
All right. So yeah, I understand that, but one of the there's no there's a sexual attraction, there's a chemistry, there's some, I mean, is sex not part of it at all? Like there's
It
something wrong with your own sex, or, your relationship with your own spouse or partner, whoever you're
right.
supposedly monogamous with?
It can be. That can be a contributing factor. In our case, we had a very healthy sex life. We had a very good marriage, as strange as it sounds. The reason my husband went elsewhere, and this is also crucial in repair, is figuring out what caused this and why he was doing this, was he had this super high need for external validation. So whenever in his case, he also had a trauma background. Whenever he had something bad or stressful happen, whenever we were going through a tough time, the tape that would play in his head is, people abandon me, people leave, this is too good to be true. I'm going to go reach out, connect with this person, and that way I'll have this backup person. So I won't be hurt if Laura leaves. So on the flip side, when things were too good and we were having an amazing time and life was wonderful, this same trauma loop would replay in his brain. This is can't be real. This is too good. She is faking it. Laura is faking it, and she's setting me up to leave. So I better go out, get that validation, and protect myself.
So he didn't trust you, or he didn't trust the relationship, or he was didn't trust that you would stay with him, or you said that he had a trauma in his life. Can we talk about that? Like that, I'm sure that has obviously a big impact on the way he handled his feelings of feelings of less than, or he feeling,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, he had a severely traumatic background filled with emotional abuse, physical abuse, extreme poverty. He was in foster care. He literally did not have enough to eat, and the abuse he suffered was horrific. So, at the time, in the early 90s when we met, his story was, and I think the narrative for a lot of people was at that time, it didn't affect me. I can just move on. I can just become successful and live my life, and I never have to address the past. The past is the past. Well, trauma does and will come back and bite you if it's not addressed.
Yeah. The trauma is all, that's true. The trauma is always there. And they now talking about intergenerational trauma, which is a whole other topic. But so I'm assuming that you came from a very different kind of background.
Yes, I came from a very functional background, identifying our feelings, communicating our feelings. I had trusted adults in my life. I never feared that I would be hurt emotionally, physically. I always had plenty to eat. And yes, that was part of the, I think, initial attraction between us. I was everything he had lacked in his life. And I thought, wow, here is this amazing human. And he reveres me and my family. And this is great. And he wants to be just like us. And isn't this going to be wonderful? Little did I realize when you have experienced such significant trauma, it does make you hypervigilant in all the wrong ways. It makes you know at a deep, almost cellular level that I am unworthy. And it just created the perfect storm.
And in your case, as I'm listening to the story, or your narrative, it must have been somewhat of a high for you to have this husband who I'm saying adored you. That maybe that's not the right word, but who respected you and loved you and was enamored with you. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that must have played into the whole relationship in terms of how you handled each other. Um, what, what happened? At what point did you realize that he was doing this, having these affairs for the reasons that he was, did?
It, yeah. And I want to say, yes, I 100%, it was adored me. And yes, it did feel amazing. And that was part of my healing journey as well. And we can address that momentarily. When I found out, it was a long, slow reveal because it didn't make sense to my brain. So sometimes I would see something or I would hear something and I would think, well, that absolutely does not make sense with the reality that I'm living. We have a great partnership. We have a great relationship. He does adore me. This doesn't make sense. So as I started to learn the truth, it was a long, slow reveal over a couple of months because it was really hard for him to speak the truth, obviously, and it was really hard for me to hear the truth. From there, it was also a long, slow journey of both of us doing work on ourselves before we worked as a couple, but figuring things out for ourselves. What is really going on with me? What is this dynamic that I'm chasing? What am I doing? And what can I do better before we came back together and addressed our relationship with each other?
Well, before you did that, were you angry? Were you,
Oh,
did you have the typical response? And then, yeah.
when I first found out, I quite literally fell to my knees and vomited because the impact was so visceral. It was complete and total shock. From that place of shock and utter collapse, then I went into this hyper fix it phase. I have to take care of my kids. I have to take care of myself. I've got to close bank accounts. I've got to find all of these different things. From there, I went into rage, extreme rage.
I think we all get that.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And then, because this is an evolution, okay, that is what you just described would be more of the typical response. And then now you're enraged. And then what?
As I was learning more, as I was learning about there's more infidelity, there's more things that are happening, it went from I hate you, I never want to see you again, get out of my life, to this doesn't make sense. This, like I said earlier, this is not the reality that I'm living. This is not who you are. This is not who we are. What happened? Why did you do this? Because this doesn't make sense. And you are a good person filled with integrity. Something is up. Tell me what is really going on. And it was that curiosity that was the driver for both of our healing.
And it would seem to me you also what you had in terms of the well, you're saying you're attracted to each other, you loved each other, all of that was still there, right? The foundation was there.
Yes, we've always been best friends, great life, enjoy the same thing. And it was like, why? Why would something like this happen? I mean, we had the quote, normal marital struggles sometimes. You know what I mean? You have a fight, you get angry. But overall, we really had a great relationship. So it didn't fundamentally make sense.
So, okay, so then you're beginning to come to grips with actually what's happening. And do you think that many couples find themselves in this position? I mean, or is it, or infidelity can come from very different places?
It's so shocking. Yes, infidelity can come from many different places. However, so many of the people that I work with have this very typical pattern that I have. One partner with a trauma background with unresolved issues, needs, the inability to communicate what's going on inside of them, and then another partner that is an overachiever, high functioning, taking care of things, emotionally regulating their partner, and then this perfect storm, infidelity, and it's the infidelity that is the catalyst for people to see what is really going on in themselves and to get that long overdue healing that they need.
I'm thinking, do you think that perhaps the more dependent he felt on you, the more scared he became,
Yes.
with his dependency, and hence, going out and trying to validate his own worth by just having these affairs?
Yes. It's dependency is not exactly the word. It's more of an inferiority that things can always be taken away from me, that I am my reality is controlled by other people and that things can happen to me, and that we both had this need to prove ourselves to each other. Looking back, we see one of the shifts. Our relationship used to be more transactional. We didn't used to be quite as vulnerable to the other person because we each wanted to be the good person in each other's eyes. I wanted to be seen as competent and functional. He wanted to be seen as competent and functional. Whereas now there is less performance, there is more depth, there is more raw emotion. And it's a deeper, richer relationship now. But I didn't even know at the time that our relationship used to be more transactional. I thought that was normal.
So, but now okay, you've gone through all of this. Are there moments that or do you have moments when you feel maybe he's with somebody, maybe he's doing the same thing? Is it possible? Because as you say, relationships, you're always having normal relationships. People argue, they resolve things, they go back and forth. And in those situations, is there any underlying feelings of, is it going to go back to the way it was? He's going to seek his,
Right. Quite honestly, no, there's not that fear or that concern because he shows up so differently. He has such a different skill set now in communicating, in talking about when he feels insecure, when things are hard for him. However, I will still have some triggered moments sometimes where I will think about something and it will scare me and I will have a flashback to something. So, do I fear that he will cheat again? Honestly, no. But do I still have triggers based on what happened in the past? Yes.
Yeah. So then what do you do?
A variety of things. First of all, I think anybody who goes through infidelity or any sort of trauma, the first step is really learning how to develop a skill set to re-regulate your own nervous system. I am an expert at regulating my own nervous system now.
You're a lawyer.
Oh, yes. Yes,
We
I
know
am.
that. Yes, right.
Yes. So, yeah, whether it's walking or breath work or journaling, or I also can go to him at this point and say, this is what's going on for me. What can we talk about this? And that's enormously helpful.
Yeah. So, and I assume that he also does the same thing, like when stuff is happening or there are triggers that you realize this is not, I'm emotionally not feeling good, that you can talk to each other. I mean,
Yes.
I would assume that's kind of like the number one thing, right?
Yes, it is, because in the past, we wouldn't bring this kind of insecurity to each other. In the past, we would just go do something and try to feel better and kind of brush it under the rug. So now we are way more vulnerable. And yes, he does come to me quite often with his shame spiral, with his insecurity, with his fear, with all of that.
You two must be really close. As I'm listening to you, I mean, because you're talking about your relationship was transactional, you didn't even realize it, but now it's really based on sharing those vulnerabilities and all this, I'm saying stuff in capital letters. And that really brings couples close together. Now, you're a
Mhm.
coach, okay? So, I think we just started to touch on it, but people don't necessarily have the same situation as you do. I
No.
mean, just statistically, isn't the male animal? I think what 80% or whatever the statistics are do have affairs at one time or another, or sleep with somebody else besides their partner.
Yes. The statistics are shocking,
Yeah,
very shocking. At one point, I had even seen one that said up to 92%, I think
yeah.
it was, of relationships had cheating in it in one form or another.
And is it cheating or is it biology?
I think it's a great question. And I also think there is so much narrative around what men and women are like. And I always pose the question, just because somebody tells you that that's who you are, is that really who you are? Because I work with both men and women, both the betrayer and the betrayed. And oftentimes, the male who has betrayed will say things like, I thought I was supposed to do this. I thought it would make me more manly. I wasn't feeling that I really wanted to do this, but I thought this would be the jolt that I needed because men are supposed to do this.
And what about the women? Because women too, now I think the statistics are climbing in terms of women
Yes.
having, yeah,
hmm And so much of it, it's cultural narrative. How is
yeah.
the cultural narrative shifting? And I mean, isn't this one of the most, I think, profoundly deep questions? Who are we exclusive of our environment? And that's really hard to know.
Well, we come from our culture, right? This puritanical background. I mean, that's
Yes.
sort of the overlying and the patriarchal and all of that. So that I think that fits into play too, as well.
hmm
Yeah. So, what do you do with clients or people that you're coaching? Infidelity, the betrayed and the betrayer. Um, how do you approach? I'm curious as to how do
hmm
you approach, say, the first session, like because
Yes.
yeah,
The first session is about learning how to regulate yourself in the moment, because whether you are in shock or grief or rage, you need some immediately accessible tools to bring yourself back to a regulated state so you can start making clear decisions for yourself and so you can be functional. After that, what I really do is help people come back home to themselves. This is something you need to do for you. So many people incorrectly think it's a couple's problem and they want to lean into marriage counseling. You have to work on yourself before you move to the partnership. And that is so hard. I think, especially when you've been betrayed, you want to say, he did this and he did that and he did this. And all I was doing, this has happened to you, but you can't make it about them. You have to make it about you. And that sometimes can, I'm not kidding, take 6 months or so to untangle and realize what I'm in control of is me and I can't control another person.
yeah. I think 6 months is a short period of time, actually, depending how long
Right.
you, how long the relationship has been going on, right? How,
hmm
do you find that, let's say, the male in the relationship is having the affair, or he's um, the what do you call it, the designated patient? I think there's another word for that. But and then suddenly it's revealed that, oh, his partner or spouse has also been having affairs.
Yes. That's a tough one. That is a tough one. And again, gender roles and expectations come into play so often. And we have to untangle all of those. What has society told me I'm supposed to do in this situation? What does it mean? Because the truth is, another person's infidelity says nothing about you, it says everything about them. And that's that untangling, and that it's not a tit for tat. And it's not this, that, or the other thing. Maybe it's a symptom that there was a lot going on in this relationship that was unsaid, unaddressed. And what was causing you to cheat and what was causing me to cheat? And do we want to unpack that alone, or do we want to unpack that together and then decide whether or not we want to move forward in this relationship or not?
Laura, what about today, since people live to be, let's say, 70, 80 years old? How does it fit into the relationship and or culture that you're going to just have a relationship with one person, a sexual relationship for 50 years?
I'm glad that people are talking about this because it's not for everybody. And what I do like to say in my own marriage, and I like to guide other people with this wisdom as well, is do what works for you in the moment. And sometimes when we project into the future, it's too much. I can't figure out what I'm going to want in 10 years. I don't know what my partner might want in 10 years. Be with yourself in the present. Yes, move through the hard times if you'd like. Yes, don't constantly jump ship, but also be very present with yourself. What do I want? When things are done in the relationship, how can we agree that, you know what, things are done in this relationship? A lot has happened. I don't have an interest in moving forward. And instead of making it blame and shame and failure, celebrate. Hey, we are both at the same place. We each want something else different. I honor you. I honor you. We are done, and let's move forward.
Yeah, that's great advice, I think. Staying in the moment and um, uncovering all the issues in your relationship for now. You can't make promises for 50 years. Maybe you have to change the marriage vows till death do us part, or whatever, or loving forever, or all that, because you start off kind of with this defining the relationship, maybe not in the right way.
Right, right. And people truly can define a relationship whatever way they want to define it. A marriage, I mean, going back to the legal thing, it's a contract. We can contract for whatever we want. So, yes, define your own terms, create the marriage that is mutually beneficial and satisfactory. And then if you need to update that contract every 5 years, every 10 years, have a conversation, update the terms, and keep moving ahead until you no longer want to.
We only have a couple of minutes left. That's great advice, and there's so much more. I mean, could you just tell us what you're the creator of the Fuel Up Burnout Recovery Method?
Yes.
We've been talking. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just
yes. Yeah, I've got 2 different books. Flaunt, Drop Your Cover and Reveal Your Smart, Sexy and Spiritual Self. And that's about the inner work, about moving from crumbled to that space of openness. My other book is It's Not Burnout, It's Betrayal, 5 Steps to Fuel Up and Thrive. And that's more that external work. How do I do things in relationships, whether it's professionally or personally?
And I have been talking to Laura Cheadle, and she is the author of these books. And we've been talking about the real drivers of infidelity and how to reclaim identity and self-worth following betrayal. I think we've only covered the surface, actually. I mean, there's so much information here. So we can get we can get your books on online in Audible. Yeah.
Yes. Online. Flaunt is traditionally published, so you can find that anywhere books are sold. There's the audio version, the digital, all of that.
Great talking to you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was good.